We are looking at a stack of notes today that tells one of the most compelling stories in American music history.
We are.
We're talking about Pearl Jam. And I don't just mean the band that gave us Alive or Jeremy in the early 90s. I mean the entity that survived the collapse of the grunge movement, fought the corporate music machine, and somehow, against all odds, managed to stay relevant right up to the present day.
It is a significant history. Pearl Jam is widely considered one of the key bands of the Seattle grunge movement, yet they have outsold and outlasted the majority of their contemporaries.
And by a huge margin.
As of 2018, they had sold over 100 million albums worldwide. Their debut album, 10, is certified 13 times platinum by the RIAA.
13 times platinum. That is a staggering number. But what makes this story so fascinating to me isn't just the sales figures, it's the central tension of their career. This is a band that spent a solid decade deliberately tearing apart their own fame just to survive it.
That is an accurate assessment.
They did everything they could to be less famous, and in doing so, they built a legacy that is arguably stronger than if they had just, played the game.
Rolling Stone described the band as having spent much of the previous decade deliberately deconstructing their own celebrity. Our objective here is to trace that history.
Right.
From the ashes of Mother Love Bone in the late 1980s, through their battles with Ticketmaster, the tragedy at Roskilde, and their evolving lineup, leading all the way to the recent major shift in the band's structure in 2025.
It is a massive timeline to cover. And to understand Pearl Jam, you have to understand what happened before Pearl Jam. We have to go back to the mid-'80s in Seattle.
Yes, to the band Green River.
You have Stone Gossard and Jeff Ament. They were in Green River, which is often cited as the very first grunge band. But it didn't last.
Green River disbanded in 1987. The primary cause was a stylistic division between Gossard and Ament on one side and bandmate Mark Arm on the other.
Arm wanted to stay more punk, more underground. Gossard and Ament were looking toward a bigger, more hard rock influenced sound. Right.
Correct. Following this split, Gossard and Ament began playing with vocalist Andrew Wood, eventually organizing the band Mother Love Bone.
And Mother Love Bone was poised to be huge. They had the charisma, they had the songs, they had the major label backing from Polygram. Everything was lined up.
They were seen as the next major rock act to emerge from Seattle.
But then, tragedy struck. Just days before their debut album, Apple, was set to be released in 1990, Andrew Wood died of a heroin overdose.
Wood's death occurred in March 1990. It was a devastating event for the Seattle music community and specifically for Ament and Gossard. The demise of Mother Love Bone left them without a band and, for a time, without direction.
I can't imagine. Your best friend dies and your entire future just evaporates overnight. Stone Gossard spent that time writing material that was harder edged than what he had done before.
It's a different musical direction.
Yeah, and he started practicing with Mike McCready, a guitarist whose own band, Shadow, had just broken up. McCready is actually the one who encouraged Gossard to reconnect with Jeff Ament.
The three began practicing together.
So you have the instrumental trio Gossard, Ament, McCready, but they needed a singer and a drummer.
They produced a 5-song demo tape to circulate in search of these missing members.
This tape gets nicknamed the Stone Gossard Demos 1991, but it's more commonly known as
the Mama San tape.
Right. And they gave this tape to Jack Irons, the former drummer for the Red Hot Chili Peppers, hoping he might be interested in joining or at least passing it along.
Irons declined to join the band at that time. He was committed to other projects.
But he did them a huge favor. He gave the tape to a friend of his in San Diego, a guy who was working part-time at a gas station and spending his free time surfing. That guy was Eddie Vedder.
And this is where the timeline accelerates rapidly.
It really does. This is where the mythology kicks in. Vedder gets the tape, listens to it shortly before going surfing.
According to the source material, the lyrics came to him while he was in the water. He returned and recorded vocals for 3 of the songs, Alive, Once, and Footsteps.
And he didn't just sing on them. He conceived this whole story, this mini opera he called Mama San. It's a dark narrative about incest, serial killers, all tying together.
He mailed the cassette tape back to Seattle.
And the guys were blown away. I mean, you have to imagine hearing that voice for the first time over your own music. They flew him up for an audition, and within a week, he was in the band. It moved that fast.
The chemistry was immediate.
But here's a detail that I think a lot of people forget. They weren't called Pearl Jam yet. They were named after a basketball player.
Correct. With the addition of Dave Cruzen on drums, the band adopted the name Mookie Blaylock, referencing an active NBA point guard at the time.
It's so random. They played their first official show under this name at the Off-Ramp Cafe in Seattle.
On October 22, 1990.
They eventually signed to Epic Records, and of course they had to change the name. You can't be a major label band named after a pro athlete. And for years, there was this story floating around about the name Pearl Jam.
The Peyote Jam story.
Exactly. The one about Eddie Vedder's great-grandmother, Pearl, who was married to a Native American and made this hallucinogenic jam. It's a great story.
However, it is factually incorrect. In a 2006 interview, Vedder admitted the story was, in his words, total bullshit.
He just made it up because he thought it was more interesting than the real story.
Which is that Jeff Emmett and Mike McCready have clarified that Emmett came up with the word pearl, and jam was added after the band attended a Neil Young concert.
Right, where he extended songs into these long 15 or 20-minute improvisations, jams.
That connection to Neil Young is a recurring theme throughout their career.
It is. He's kind of their spiritual godfather. So they settle on the name Pearl Jam. They enter London Bridge Studios in March 1991 to record their debut, 10. And the drummer situation was already unstable.
Dave Crewson played on the album, but he left the band in May 1991.
He had a serious problem with alcohol and had to check himself into rehab.
He was briefly replaced by Matt Chamberlain, who had previously played with Edie Brickell and New Bohemians. Chamberlain then left to join the Saturday Night Live band.
So, another one gone?
It was Chamberlain who suggested Dave Abruzes as a replacement. Abruzes flew from Texas for the audition and joined the group for the live shows supporting 10.
So 10 is released in August 1991, and the title itself was a tribute to Mookie Blaylock.
His jersey number was 10.
The album deals with some incredibly dark subjects: depression, suicides, loneliness, homelessness. But the sound was anthemic. It had that classic rock influence that set them apart from the more metallic or punk sounds of their Seattle peers.
The album was not an immediate success. It was slow to sell initially. It took about a year for it to gain traction.
But when it did, it exploded. By the second half of 1992, it had become a breakthrough success, reaching #2 on the Billboard charts and producing huge singles like Alive, Even Flow, and Jeremy.
The music video for Jeremy was in heavy rotation on MTV.
Let's unpack Alive for a second. This is one of those songs where the audience interpretation completely changed the meaning for the artist. Vedder originally wrote it as a semi-autobiographical curse.
It is part of the Mama San trilogy.
Right. It's about a son discovering his father is actually his stepfather, and the grief-stricken mother turning to the son in a way that is, let's say, sexually uncomfortable because he looks so much like the biological father.
Vedder has stated that he originally viewed being alive as a curse in the context of the song. The protagonist survives this trauma, but is burdened by it.
But the chorus is just this huge, soaring, "I'm still alive," and crowds just latched onto it as this life-affirming, triumphant anthem.
Vedder noted that seeing fans react to it in this positive way at concerts altered his perspective. He said the audience lifted the curse for him. He now sees it as a song of survival.
And then you have Jeremy. That song and its video were everywhere. He was inspired by a true story of a high school student in Texas.
Jeremy Wade Dell, who shot himself in front of his English class in January 1991.
The video was so intense. It won Video of the Year at the MTV Video Music Awards. But that success, it propelled them to a level of fame that I don't think they were ready for.
The success of 10 placed Pearl Jam at the forefront of the grunge explosion, alongside Nirvana, Alice in Chains, and Soundgarden. However, this success also attracted criticism.
A lot of it, especially from the UK press.
The British music magazine NME wrote that Pearl Jam was trying to steal money from young alternative kids' pockets.
Accusing them of being careerists, basically. That criticism stung. Kurt Cobain also had some friction with them early on, viewing them as more corporate and less authentic than Nirvana.
Cobain eventually reconciled with Vedder before his death, but the initial rivalry was heavily reported in the media.
The band's response to all this was just to tour relentlessly. Their live performances were legendary for their intensity. Vedder was climbing scaffolding, diving into crowds. It was an untamed force, as he described it.
Their live show became their primary means of connecting with their audience.
But by 1993, the pressure was clearly getting to them. They were deeply uncomfortable with the level of success they had achieved.
This discomfort manifested in their business decisions regarding their second album, V's.
This is where they start to pull back. Hard.
Despite the massive success of the Jeremy video, the band refused to produce a music video for any of the songs on the new album.
Including the song Black from 10, which the label was desperate to release as a single. They begged them to make a video for it.
The band refused.
Vedder had this philosophy that music videos robbed the listener of their own imagination. He said that before videos, you'd listen in a beanbag chair with headphones and create your own world. Videos destroyed that.
This decision was a significant departure from industry norms at the time.
It drove the record label crazy, but they stood their ground. They decided their music would speak for itself.
And it did. Despite the lack of videos, V's, released in October 1993, set a record for the most copies sold in the first week of release, over 950,000 copies.
Almost 1 million copies in 1 week, with no music videos.
This record stood for 5 years. The album included singles like Go, Daughter, and Animal, which received significant radio play.
They were arguably the biggest band in the world at that moment. And what do? They decide to scale back even more. Fewer interviews, no videos, and then they picked a fight with the biggest giant in the industry, Ticketmaster.
This conflict began when the band discovered that Ticketmaster had added service charges to tickets for a series of charity benefit shows in Chicago. They felt the charges were excessive.
They wanted to keep ticket prices low for their fans, under $20. And Ticketmaster was adding these service fees that the band felt were predatory.
Pearl Jam attempted to organize a 1994 summer tour without using Ticketmaster services.
Which is basically impossible.
It was extremely difficult. It required them to create their own venues in rural areas and fairgrounds, as Ticketmaster had exclusive contracts with most major arenas and stadiums in the country.
Imagine the logistics of that. Building a concert venue from scratch in a field just to avoid a service fee is a matter of principle.
On June 30th, 1994, Stone Gossard and Jeff Ament testified before a congressional subcommittee.
Right, in Washington, D.C.
The Department of Justice was investigating Ticketmaster's practices. Pearl Jam alleged that the company used anti-competitive and monopolistic practices to control the market.
But the tour fell apart. It was a logistical nightmare. They had to cancel it.
Jeff Ament later stated that the battle killed their career momentum for a time and that they were so hard-headed about the fight. The Justice Department eventually dropped its case.
So they basically lost.
Uh-huh.
But they made their point. And while all this external battling was happening, the band was internally imploding during the recording of their third album, Vitalogy.
They were writing and recording during breaks on the tumultuous V's tour. Tensions were extremely high.
You can hear it on the record. It's an angry, weird album.
Producer Brendan O'Brien described the Vitalogy sessions as strained. He noted that communication between band members was poor at the time.
And then another drummer change. Following the recording, Dave Abruzzi was fired.
The band cited political differences. Specifically, Abruzzi disagreed with the Ticketmaster boycott, which caused significant friction with the other members.
So they let him go. And he was replaced by Jack Irons, the same guy who gave Vedder the demo tape years earlier. Circle closes.
Irons made his live debut with the band at Neil Young's 1994 Bridge School benefit.
Irons brought a completely different feel to the band. Much groovier, less aggressive than Abruzzi. Vitalogy came out in late 1994. First on vinyl, which was unusual then.
2 weeks before the CD and cassette release.
It was a strange record. You had punk songs like Spin the Black Circle. You had weird sound experiments like Bugs, where Vedder's playing an accordion. And then you had Better Man.
Better Man is a notable track. Vedder had written it years prior with his old band, Bad Radio.
And Pearl Jam had rejected it for V's.
Correct. They felt it was too accessible, or pop. It was producer Brendan O'Brien who convinced them to record it for Vitalogy.
And what happens? It becomes one of their biggest songs ever.
It reached #1 on the Billboard Mainstream Rock chart and spent 8 weeks there.
That really highlights their mindset at the time. They were actively afraid of a song sounding too much like a hit. By 1996, they were ready to completely break away from that anthemic 10 sound. They released No Code.
No Code represented a deliberate stylistic shift away from the sound that had made them famous. It featured experimental ballads, garage rock, and even influences from world music.
Lyrically, it was very introspective.
The themes dealt with self-examination and the pressures of fame. The band also continued their refusal to play in Ticketmaster venues, which severely limited their touring options for the album.
I remember Ament said something like, the album was about growing up. It debuted at #1, but it fell down the charts quickly. A lot of the casual fans who just wanted Even Flow Part 2, they checked out.
And the band seemed to be comfortable with that outcome.
They were filtering their audience. But by 1998, with the album Yield, they started to find a balance again.
Yield was a return to a more straightforward rock sound, reminiscent of their earlier work, but with a new sense of maturity.
The recording process was different too, wasn't it?
It was a more collaborative effort. Jeff Ament noted that everyone had a say, and Eddie Vedder shared more of the lyrical duties. This reduced the internal tension that had plagued the previous albums.
They also made a music video. Sort of.
They released their first music video since 1992 for the song Do the Evolution. However, it was entirely animated by comic book artist Todd McFarlane and director Kevin Altieri.
So they maintained their refusal to appear in videos themselves, but they found a creative way around it.
Correct.
Around this time, they had this accidental massive hit with Last Kiss. It was a cover of a 1960s ballad they recorded during a sound check.
They initially released it as a single for their official fan club.
But radio stations got a hold of it and started playing it. The demand was huge.
It was eventually released to the public as a benefit single, with proceeds going to aid refugees of the Kosovo War. It peaked at #2 on the Billboard charts, becoming their highest charting single to date.
All from a soundcheck recording. And just as things seemed to be settling, another change. In 1998, Jack Irons left the band.
He cited dissatisfaction with the rigors of extensive touring.
Which brings us to a major stabilization point in their history. They brought in Matt Cameron, the former drummer for Soundgarden, which had recently broken up.
Matt Cameron joined in 1998, initially as a temporary replacement for their summer tour, but he soon became a permanent member. This lineup, Vedder, Ament, Gassard, McCready, and Cameron, would remain stable for over 2 decades.
The classic lineup for most fans. They released the album Binaural in 2000. But the tour for that album is marked by the darkest day in the band's history, June 30, 2000. The Roskilde Festival in Denmark.
During their performance, the crowd rushed the stage. A combination of poor ground conditions and a powerful surge from the back of the audience created a dangerous situation.
The band stopped the music. Vedder pleaded with the crowd to step back, but it was too late.
9 fans were crushed and suffocated in the surge. It was a tragedy that deeply affected the band members.
They canceled the remaining dates of their European tour and seriously contemplated retiring from music altogether.
They were initially blamed by some festival organizers, but were later officially cleared of responsibility. The investigation found that several safety measures had failed.
I can't imagine how you even process something like that. Vedder said later that getting back on stage and facing crowds again was the only way they could work through it.
Yep.
But it changed them.
The lyrics on their subsequent album, 2002's Riot Act, were heavily influenced by the sense of mortality and loss.
There's a track on that tour called Arc, which is a vocal tribute to the 9 victims.
Vedder only performed it 9 times on the 2003 tour, once for each victim. It was also deliberately left off the official live bootlegs from those shows, out of respect.
And speaking of bootlegs, that was another major shift around this time.
Yes. To combat illegal bootleggers and provide quality audio to their fan base, the band began releasing official bootlegs of almost every show they played, starting with the 2000 Binaural tour.
They released 72 live albums from that tour alone.
The series set records for the most albums debuting on the Billboard 200 chart simultaneously.
Moving into the early 2000s, the band got much more overtly political. We're talking about the Riot Act era, around 2002 and 2003. This is during the George W. Bush presidency.
Eddie Vedder became a very vocal critic of the administration's policies.
During shows, he would perform the song Buleager while wearing a rubber mask of the president.
He would often hang the mask on the microphone stand or, at some shows, impale it on the stand. This action was highly controversial. During a show in Denver, Colorado, many fans walked out in protest.
They were not afraid to alienate parts of their audience to make a political point. This period also marked the end of their long-standing contract with Epic Records in 2003.
They were free agents for the first time since 1991.
They released the single Man of the Hour for the film Big Fish on their own. Then came the self-titled album in 2006, the one fans call the Avocado album.
That album was released through J Records, a one-off deal with BMG.
And it was a return to that aggressive hard rock sound. The lead single, Worldwide Suicide, was a direct criticism of the Iraq War.
The band continued to strengthen their own infrastructure. For their 2009 album Backspacer, they utilized a self-distribution model in the U.S. through their own label, Monkey Wrench Records.
And a deal with Target, right? For the physical copies.
Correct. Backspacer was a different sound again, influenced by pop and new wave, featuring shorter, more concise songs.
And it worked. It became their first album to hit #1 on the charts since No Code way back in 1996.
It was seen as a commercial and critical comeback.
It really felt like a renaissance. They were hitting #1 again, they were playing these marathon shows with ever-changing set lists, and they were settled into their role as elder statesmen of rock.
In 2013, they released Lightning Bolt.
Which won a Grammy, but for the recording package, not the music itself.
That is correct. Then, in 2017, they received a major institutional honor.
The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
They were inducted by David Letterman in their first year of eligibility. It was a formal recognition of their longevity and influence.
Fast forward to 2020. They released Gigaton, but the timing was difficult.
The North American tour was scheduled to begin in March 2020. It was postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic.
It was years before they could properly tour that album, but they eventually returned to the road. And in recent years, they've started to open up their archives significantly.
In 2021, they launched Deep, a digital collection of nearly 200 concerts from their archives, accessible to fan club members.
And visually, they changed too. This is a big deal for longtime fans. For decades, a Pearl Jam show was just the guys on stage playing instruments. No screens, no lasers, nothing.
A very music-first aesthetic.
Exactly. But on their tour starting around 2024, they began using large video screens and stage visuals created by artist Rob Sheridan. It was a huge shift.
The year 2024 also brought significant challenges. They released the album Dark Matter, produced by Andrew Watt, which received critical acclaim for its raw, live sound.
A great record. But the tour had some serious problems.
During the European leg in June and July of 2024, they were forced to cancel shows in London and Berlin due to illness within the band. Eddie Vedder later described the illness as a near-death experience.
Which brings us to the most recent and for many the most shocking development in the band's long history. For 27 years, Matt Cameron was the rock behind the kit.
He was the longest tenured drummer they ever had.
He brought so much stability after the chaos of the early years. But that era ended.
On July 7, 2025, Matt Cameron announced his departure from Pearl Jam. The band released a statement thanking him for his 27 years of service.
No real reason was given, just a mutual parting of ways.
As of early 2026, the drum position remains a point of transition, hearkening back to the revolving door of drummers they experienced in the early 1990s.
It really is a full circle moment, isn't it? They are back to a core four-piece lineup facing a major change. So, looking back at this journey from 1990 to 2026, what is the musical legacy here?
Stylistically, they were always less heavy than many of their grunge contemporaries. They drew more from 1970s classic rock like Led Zeppelin, The Who, and of course Neil Young.
You can hear it all over their music. And Vedder's voice.
His distinctive baritone, often compared to Jim Morrison of The Doors, spawned countless imitators throughout the 90s and beyond.
But their legacy is also defined by their survival. They outlasted Nirvana, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains in their original forms. In a 2005 USA Today poll, they were voted the greatest American rock band.
Their career is a testament to endurance.
And their activism is a huge part of that identity. From Vedder writing pro-choice on his arm during their MTV Unplugged set in 1992.
To the Ticketmaster fight, their support for the West Memphis Three, and their commitment to environmental causes, such as carbon-neutral tours.
They cultivated this fan base that's often compared to the Grateful Dead's. People who follow them from city to city because every single set list is different. You never see the same show twice.
It is a career defined by integrity and a unique relationship with its audience. They navigated the explosion of fame, tragic loss, and immense industry changes without, it seems, compromising their core values.
From a cassette tape recorded by a surfer in San Diego to selling out stadiums in 2026, it has been a long, strange road. Thanks for listening.